Captain William Harris stood at the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, his eyes fixed on the massive alien ship that hung in space before them. The vessel was at least 3 times the size of his own ship, its surface covered in strange patterns that seemed to glow with an inner light. "They're hailing us again, sir," said Lisa Young, the communications officer. Harris took a deep breath. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and the image of a tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth that seemed too wide for its narrow face. "Greetings again, Captain Harris," said the alien in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Krultor of the Galactic Concordat. We have prepared the standard integration treaty for your leaders to sign." "Thank you, Ambassador," Harris replied. "We'll relay the document to Earth immediately." 3 days later, Harris sat in a large conference room at the United Nations in New York. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth, the President, top military leaders, and Ambassador Diane Miller, a sharp woman in her 50s with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "So these aliens expect us to just sign this?" Miller asked, holding up the tablet with the treaty text. "Yes, Mom," Harris said. "They seemed shocked when I said we needed time to review it. Apparently, most species sign right away." Miller frowned. "Most species haven't read the fine print." She pointed to several sections of the document. "Look here, and here. This would limit our military ships to our own solar system. This would give them rights to mine asteroids in our system. And this," she paused, her finger tapping on a particular clause, "this would put all our technology development under their review board." The President leaned forward. "What are they offering in return?" "Protection, sir," Harris said, "and limited access to some of their technology. Very limited." Miller closed the tablet with a snap. "This isn't a treaty between equals. It's what you'd offer a child." 1 week later, the alien delegation sat across from the human representatives in the UN chamber. 7 different alien species were present, each stranger than the last. Some had tentacles, others had scales, and one seemed to float above its chair. Krultor spread his 4-fingered hands. "We are pleased that you have had time to review the Standard Integration Treaty. All members of the Concordat have signed similar agreements. It is the foundation of our peaceful galaxy." Miller smiled politely. "We appreciate your patience, Ambassador Krultor. We have carefully reviewed your proposal." The aliens leaned forward expectantly. "Earth must respectfully decline," Miller said. Silence fell over the room. The aliens froze in their seats. One of them, a small green creature, dropped a device it was holding. "Perhaps you misunderstand," Krultor said slowly. "This is not optional. All species join the Concordat." "We understand perfectly," Miller replied. "The terms are not acceptable to humanity. We are open to negotiating a different agreement, one that respects our sovereignty." The aliens began whispering to each other in strange, clicking languages. Harris noticed some of them looked afraid. "This has never happened before," Krultor said. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "No species has ever refused." "Then perhaps it's time for a change," Miller said calmly. The alien delegation left Earth that same day. As Harris watched their ship depart from the bridge of the Defiance, his second-in-command, Jack Peters, stood beside him. "What do you think they'll do now, sir?" Peters asked. Harris shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we just changed the rules of the game." In the darkness of space, the alien ship accelerated away from Earth. Inside, Krultor was already sending an urgent message to the Concordat High Council. "Humans have refused the treaty. I repeat, humans have refused. Request immediate guidance. These beings are different." 6 months passed since Earth had shocked the Galactic Concordat by refusing their treaty. Life on Earth continued as normal, but the military stayed on high alert. New defense satellites were rushed into orbit, and countries that once fought each other now worked together, united by the knowledge that they were no longer alone in the universe. Ambassador Diane Miller was eating lunch when her phone rang. She picked it up with a frown. "They're back," said the voice of Captain Harris. "A bigger ship this time. And they're asking for you by name." 3 hours later, Miller stood in the same UN meeting room, now facing a delegation twice the size of the first one. At their center sat a tall, thin alien with pale purple skin and silver markings on its face. "Ambassador Miller," the alien said in a musical voice. "I am High Counselor Zax Turl of the Vexeri, senior member of the Concordat Council. I have come personally to address your concerns." Miller nodded politely. "We appreciate your visit, High Counselor." Zax Turl gestured, and one of his aides placed a new tablet on the table. "We have prepared a modified treaty, taking into account your species' unusual desire for independence. You will find the terms much more favorable." Miller picked up the tablet and handed it to a young man sitting quietly in the corner. "Lieutenant Sam Collins will review this document for us." Collins was not what most people expected from a military intelligence officer. With his round glasses and boyish face, he looked more like a college student than a soldier. But his mind was sharp, and he had a gift for finding what others missed. While Collins read, Zax Turl spoke about the benefits of joining the Concordat: protection from pirate species, access to trade routes, and limited technology sharing. Miller listened politely, asking questions that kept the alien talking. After an hour, Collins cleared his throat. Miller turned to him. "Ma'am, the terms do appear better on the surface," Collins said quietly. "But there's something odd in the technical appendices." He placed the tablet between them and pointed to a section filled with complex technical language about communication protocols. "This looks like standard tech compatibility stuff," he explained. "But these specific frequencies and access codes would give them backdoor access to all our communication systems. And this part here about defensive coordination would let them track and potentially override our military satellites." Miller's face showed nothing, but her eyes hardened. She looked up at Zax Turl, who was watching them closely. "High Counselor," she said calmly, "would you mind explaining why this new treaty includes hidden access to Earth's defense and communication systems?" The alien's silver markings flashed briefly. "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. Those are standard compatibility measures." Miller stood up and walked to the large screen on the wall. "Let's clear up any misunderstanding then. Lieutenant Collins, please display the relevant sections for everyone to see." Collins connected the tablet to the screen. Soon, the hidden clauses were displayed for all to see. He explained in simple terms what each would allow the Concordat to do. As he spoke, the other human delegates began to mutter angrily. Even some of the junior alien delegates looked uncomfortable. "Earth must once again decline," Miller said when Collins finished. "Not only do we reject this treaty, but we will be sharing these hidden clauses with every species in the galaxy. I wonder how many of them knew what they were really signing." Zax Turl stood abruptly. "You are making a grave mistake. The galaxy is a dangerous place for those without protection." "Is that a threat?" Miller asked quietly. "It is reality," the alien replied. "We will take our leave now." As the aliens filed out, Collins approached Miller. "What happens next?" he asked. Miller watched the aliens leave. "They'll try something else, but they've underestimated us twice now, and word will spread about what we've revealed today." Across the galaxy, news began to travel. The humans had said no again, and this time they had exposed the Concordat's hidden agenda. On dozens of worlds, people began to ask questions about their own treaties. 1 month after Earth rejected the second treaty, strange ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They didn't approach Earth, but they didn't leave either. They just waited, silent and watching. "They're blocking our path out of the solar system," Captain Harris said during an emergency meeting at the Pentagon. "Any ship that tries to go past Mars gets turned back." On the large screen behind him, 27 alien ships were shown in a loose formation. They were smaller than the diplomatic vessels that had visited Earth, but they were clearly warships. "They're calling it a protective quarantine," said Ambassador Miller. For our own safety, of course. The president frowned. So we're prisoners in our own solar system. That's exactly what they want, said Commander Kate Bennett, rising from her seat at the table. They think if they cut us off from the rest of the galaxy, we'll get scared and sign their treaty. Bennett was younger than most of the others in the room. Her short red hair and freckles made her look even younger than her 35 years. But she had spent the last 6 months studying all the data they had on alien ship movements and tactics. "And what do you suggest, Commander?" the president asked. Bennett stepped forward. "Let me take a small fleet through their blockade. Not to fight, just to show that we won't be contained." 2 weeks later, Bennett stood on the bridge of the U.S. Challenger, Earth's newest and fastest spaceship. Behind her were 5 similar ships, all built with the knowledge gained from studying alien technology. "The Concordat ships are holding position," reported her first officer, Alan Boyd. "They're watching us, but not moving to intercept yet." Bennett nodded. "All ships, prepare for pattern delta on my mark." The alien blockade was arranged to cover all the main exit paths from the solar system. But Bennett had studied their formation carefully and found small gaps, places where their sensors might overlap less perfectly. "Mark," she said. The 6 Earth ships split up, each heading for a different gap in the alien formation. They didn't fire weapons or send threatening messages. They simply moved, quick and silent, like fish finding gaps in a net. The alien ships began to move in response, trying to close the gaps. But they had spread themselves too thin. They couldn't cover everything. "The Victoria is through," Boyd reported. "The Nelson is through. The Churchill is, yes, through as well." On the screens, Bennett watched as alien ships tried to pursue, but her ships were faster in short bursts. They had studied the alien engines and built their own ships specifically to outrun them. "We're at the gap," Boyd said as the Challenger approached its own exit point. "Steady," Bennett said. 3, 2, 1. Now. The Challenger shot forward, engines burning hot. For a moment, an alien ship loomed large in their path, weapons glowing with energy. But then they were past it, racing into open space. "All ships have broken through," Boyd confirmed. "No shots fired." Bennett smiled. "Send the message to Earth, then set course for the trading outpost at Proxima Station." The message was simple. Blockade broken. Establishing trade relations beyond Concordat space. Back on Earth, news of the breakout spread quickly. Humans cheered as they watched the videos of Earth ships slipping past the alien blockade. In space, Bennett's small fleet made contact with other alien species who lived on the edges of Concordat space. Smaller species who had their own reasons to dislike the powerful alliance. They were curious about these humans who had said no to the mighty Concordat. "We have goods to trade," Bennett told a furry alien trader at Proxima Station, "and we're looking for friends who value their independence as much as we do." The alien's ears twitched with interest. "The Concordat will not be happy about this." Bennett shrugged. "The Concordat isn't happy about much that we do, but they don't control the whole galaxy, do they?" The trader made a chattering sound that might have been laughter. "No, human. Not yet. They don't." Kevin Rodriguez noticed the pattern first. As the head of cybersecurity for the North American Alliance, he spent his days watching for unusual activity on the global networks. 3 months after Commander Bennett broke through the blockade, Rodriguez spotted something strange. "It's in everything," he explained to Ambassador Miller in her office. "Social media, news sites, even children's games, but it's subtle." Miller looked at the data on his tablet. "What am I looking at?" "Foreign influence," Rodriguez said, "but not from Earth. The patterns don't match any nation we know. And look at the content." He showed her dozens of posts, articles, and videos. All of them shared the same themes. Humans were violent by nature. Space was too dangerous for people like us, and Earth needed protection from stronger species. "They're trying to scare us," Miller said. Rodriguez nodded. They want us to beg for that treaty. The campaign was clever. It didn't come from obvious alien sources. Instead, it spread through regular human accounts and websites, making it seem like people were just getting nervous about Earth's place in the galaxy. "We need to fight back," Miller said. "But how?" Rodriguez thought for a moment. "They're telling their story about us. What if we tell our own story? The real one?" 2 weeks later, Rodriguez launched the Human Cultural Exchange. It was simple. Real videos of everyday human life, streamed directly to aliens who wanted to watch. Farm workers harvesting crops, children playing in parks, scientists working in labs, artists creating music and paintings. No editing, no filters, Rodriguez explained to the press. Just humanity as we really are. At first, few aliens watched. The Concordat controlled most information networks in their space, but Commander Bennett's ships carried special transmitters to independent worlds. Soon, alien beings far from Earth were getting their first real look at humans. A video of a firefighter saving a child from a burning building went viral on 3 different planets. An old woman teaching her granddaughter to bake cookies was watched by millions of aliens who had never seen human food. "My people were told humans are dangerous predators," wrote one alien viewer from a world called Nirix. "But I have watched your children care for small animals, and your doctors heal the sick. You are not what the Concordat says." Not all the videos showed humans at their best. Rodriguez included footage of arguments, protests, and even some fights. But most aliens found these fascinating rather than frightening. "You disagree with each other, yet you don't destroy your societies," wrote another alien. In the Concordat, such disagreement would not be allowed. The Concordat tried to block the transmissions, calling them dangerous propaganda, but their efforts only made more aliens curious about what humans were sharing. In her office, Miller received a secure message from Commander Bennett. "Cultural exchange is working," Bennett wrote. "3 independent species have approached us about trade deals. They say they want to know humans better." Meanwhile, Rodriguez discovered something interesting in the Concordat's disinformation campaign. "They're afraid," he told Miller. "Look at these internal messages we intercepted. They keep using words like unpredictable and adaptable when they talk about us. They're not just trying to scare us into signing. They're trying to scare their own people about us." Miller smiled. "Good. Fear works both ways. But our best weapon isn't fear. It's truth." Across the galaxy, more aliens began to question what they had been told about humans. Many were still cautious, but they were curious too. Some even began to wonder what else the Concordat might have lied about. On a Concordat Council world, High Counselor Zax Turrell watched human videos with narrow eyes. "Cut off all transmissions from Earth," he ordered his assistants, "and prepare the integration fleet. These humans have had enough freedom." General Olivia Martinez watched the alien ship land at the military base in Nevada. Unlike the sleek diplomatic vessels from before, this one was clearly a warship. Angular, with weapons ports visible along its sides. Yet it came in peace, or so they claimed. "Welcome to Earth," Martinez said as 3 alien officers walked down the ramp. They were tall, with gray skin and eyes that seemed to reflect light like a cat's. "General Martinez," said the lead alien with a slight bow. "I am Fleet Commander Drax of the Concordat Defense Force. We bring a proposal from the High Council." Inside the base's conference room, Drax laid out a new offer. The Concordat would provide Earth with advanced shield technology and weapons if Earth would join their military alliance. Human soldiers would serve alongside alien troops to protect trade routes and respond to threats. "Your species has shown remarkable adaptability," Drax said. "Such skills would be valuable to our combined forces." Martinez studied the proposal carefully. She was a tall woman with dark skin and short black hair streaked with gray. She had spent 30 years in the military and knew when someone was trying to trap her. "This looks like a good deal on the surface," she said. "But I notice our troops would always serve under Concordat commanders, never the other way around." Drax's expression didn't change. "That is standard procedure. Our officers have thousands of years of experience. And I notice our ships would need to be fitted with Concordat control systems, Martinez continued. Systems that could override our own commands in emergency situations. Now Drax looked uncomfortable. A simple safety measure. Martinez closed the folder. Instead of signing this today, I have a counter-proposal. Let's test how well we work together first. Joint training exercises. No formal agreement yet. Drax hesitated, then nodded. The High Council may agree to this as a first step. 1 month later, soldiers from Earth trained alongside Concordat troops in the deserts of Australia. The aliens were strong and had better technology, but they followed rigid procedures and never changed their tactics. During a mock battle, Staff Sergeant Bobby Dawson and his squad were surrounded by alien troops. The aliens expected them to surrender, following standard Concordat protocol. Instead, Dawson's team split up, hid in unexpected places, and captured the alien command post from behind. That was not in the scenario parameters, complained the alien instructor. Dawson shrugged. You said to capture the flag. We captured it. In space, similar exercises took place. Earth ships were slower and less powerful than alien vessels, but they changed tactics constantly, sometimes acting alone, sometimes working in tight groups. They never do what we expect, an alien officer told Drax. It makes them difficult to counter. After 3 months of exercises, Martinez met with Drax again. Your troops perform adequately, Drax said. The High Council is prepared to accept you into the Defense Force now. Martinez smiled. Thank you, but we need more time. These exercises have been very educational for us. We'd like to continue them for at least another 6 months before making any formal commitments. Drax's eyes narrowed. The offer may not remain open that long. That would be unfortunate, Martinez said, especially since several independent systems have approached us about defense partnerships after seeing our training videos. This wasn't exactly true, but Martinez had learned that the Concordat responded to competition. What kind of partnerships? Drax asked quickly. Just preliminary talks, Martinez said. But it seems our flexible approach to tactics has attracted some interest. After Drax left, Martinez's aide approached her. We're not really talking to other systems about defense, are we? He asked. Martinez smiled. Not yet, but I bet we will be soon. The Concordat isn't the only power in the galaxy, and word is spreading that humans don't just follow orders. We find better ways to get things done. Across the galaxy, recordings of the joint exercises were being watched by military leaders of many species. Some were concerned, but others were intrigued. Humans were unlike any species they had seen before, and they kept saying no to the mighty Concordat. News of the crisis reached Earth 6 months after the military exercises. A strange plant disease had spread across multiple farming worlds in the Concordat, killing crops and creating a severe food shortage. Millions of aliens were at risk of starvation. Dr. John Foster watched the reports with growing concern. As Earth's leading expert on plant biology and alien life forms, he had been studying samples of extraterrestrial plants since first contact. They're going to use this to pressure us again, Ambassador Miller told him during an emergency meeting. The Concordat has already sent a message. They're offering us protected status and advanced technology in exchange for 30% of our food production. Foster frowned. 30% would strain our own resources, and once we start, they'd have us locked in. We'd become their farm world. Do you have any alternatives? Miller asked. Foster thought for a moment. Maybe. Let me see the data on this plant disease. 3 days later, Foster presented his findings to Earth's leaders. The disease attacked a specific protein found in most Concordat food crops, a protein similar to ones found in Earth plants. But Earth plants had evolved slightly different structures that made them resistant. I think we can modify their crops to have our resistance, Foster explained. Not a permanent solution, but it would buy time to develop better defenses. "And what do we ask for in return?" the president questioned. Foster, a quiet man with kind eyes and graying hair, looked surprised. "We don't ask for anything. People are starving." 2 weeks later, Foster boarded a ship to the Concordat agricultural world of Velos. With him went a team of Earth's best plant scientists and genetic engineers, along with samples of resistant Earth crops. On Velos, the team worked day and night. The alien scientists were initially suspicious, expecting the humans to demand payment or concessions. But Foster shared all his research openly, explaining each step as they worked to modify the alien crops. "Why are you helping us without a treaty?" asked Zerkel, the lead alien scientist. "Your government gains nothing." Foster looked up from his microscope. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because these plants are fascinating. Look at this cellular structure. We've never seen anything like it on Earth." After a month of work, they had a breakthrough. The modified crops showed strong resistance to the disease. They would grow more slowly than the original plants, but they would survive. "We can start planting immediately," Foster told the Concordat officials. "And we've prepared educational material so your farmers can understand the new crops." "This is unexpected," said the Concordat governor of Velos. "What exclusivity agreements do you require? What patent rights?" "None," Foster said. "The research is freely available to any world that needs it." The governor was confused. "But how will Earth leverage this advantage?" Foster smiled. "By showing there's another way to interact between worlds. Not everything needs to be a treaty or a power play." Word of Earth's help spread quickly throughout the Concordat worlds. Many citizens had been told that humans were selfish and dangerous. Now they were hearing about human scientists working to save alien farms without asking for anything in return. Back on Earth, Ambassador Miller received a message from the Concordat High Council. They offered a new treaty, one that would give Earth special status in the Concordat, with fewer restrictions than standard members. Miller showed the offer to Foster when he returned. "What do you think?" she asked. "It's the best deal they've offered yet." Foster looked tired after his work on Velos, but his eyes were clear. "It's still a cage, just a bigger one. And I think some of the Concordat worlds are starting to question whether they need these treaties at all." Miller nodded. "Then we keep saying no." Throughout the Concordat, aliens ate food grown from Earth-modified crops, and many began to wonder, if humans could be so helpful without treaties, what else might be possible? 1 year after Earth first said no to the Concordat, Ambassador Miller received visitors from an unexpected source. They came in small plain ships with no markings. They were not from the Concordat. "We are the Tellari," said their leader, a small blue alien with large eyes. "We signed a treaty with the Concordat 200 years ago. Now we wish to reconsider our terms." The Tellari were not alone. Over the next month, representatives from 11 different species came to Earth. Some were small trading powers, others were older civilizations that had been part of the Concordat for centuries. All had been watching Earth closely. "You showed us another way is possible," said the representative from Mox, a gas giant world. "Our people have begun to question why we give the Concordat so much power over our lives." Miller listened to them all. Then she made a bold decision. "I invite all independent and questioning species to meet on Earth," she announced. "Not for a treaty, but for a conversation about a new kind of galactic cooperation." The Concordat was furious. They called it the Human Rebellion and threatened sanctions against any species that attended the meeting. They increased their blockade around Earth's solar system. But their threats only made more aliens curious about what humans had to say. On a warm spring day, representatives from 32 different species gathered in the old United Nations building in New York. Some breathed different air and stayed in special chambers. Others needed higher gravity areas or lower light. Humans worked hard to make all of them comfortable. "Welcome to Earth," Miller said as she opened the meeting. "We are not here to make demands or create rules. We are here to listen and learn from each other as equals." For 2 weeks, The species talked. Many had never spoken directly to each other before. The Concordat had always served as the middleman, controlling communication between worlds. On the fifth day, something unexpected happened. A ship appeared in Earth's orbit, larger than any seen before. It belonged to the Narathi, a powerful but reclusive species that had kept to themselves for over 1,000 years. "We have been watching," said the Narathi ambassador, a tall figure covered in shifting patterns of light. "For centuries, we have avoided the Concordat and their treaties. Now we see we are not alone in our desire for true independence." The Narathi joining the talks changed everything. They were older and more advanced than even the Concordat. Their presence gave courage to the smaller species. As the talks continued, news spread across the galaxy. Images of aliens and humans working together, sharing meals, and freely exchanging ideas reached even the core worlds of the Concordat. Many Concordat citizens began to question their own government. On the final day, the gathered species agreed to form a new organization, the Galactic Cooperative. It would have no binding treaties, only agreements that any member could leave at any time. It would focus on trade, cultural exchange, and mutual aid during crisis. "This is a direct challenge to our authority," said High Counselor Zax Turl during an emergency meeting of the Concordat Council. "We cannot allow it to continue." "The humans must be stopped," agreed another counselor. "They are disrupting the order we have maintained for thousands of years." Zax Turl's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the integration fleet. We will give these humans one final chance to join us properly. If they refuse again." He left the threat unspoken. Back on Earth, Miller received word of the Concordat's plans from allies within their system. "They're coming in force this time," she told Captain Harris, who had been promoted to lead Earth's growing space fleet. "Not just to talk." Harris nodded grimly. "Then we'll be ready to listen. Or to fight, if we must." Across the galaxy, species held their breath. The mighty Concordat was moving against Earth. Would the humans finally say yes when faced with overwhelming force? The Concordat integration fleet arrived with overwhelming force. 500 warships filled Earth's skies, their weapons aimed at major cities. Smaller ships landed outside the United Nations building where the new Galactic Cooperative was still meeting. High Counselor Zax Turl himself led the delegation that marched into the meeting hall. His silver markings flashed with anger when he saw representatives from so many worlds sitting with the humans. "This unauthorized gathering is now ended," he announced. "All Concordat members will return to their home worlds immediately for review of their treaty obligations." No one moved. Ambassador Miller stood slowly. "The species gathered here are exercising their right to peaceful assembly and discussion. Many are not Concordat members, and those who have not violated any specific treaty terms." Zax Turl's eyes narrowed. "Earth has been patient enough. You will sign our integration treaty now, or we will demonstrate why no species has ever refused the Concordat's protection." Captain William Harris, now Admiral Harris, stepped forward. Earth had fewer ships than the Concordat, but they stood ready to defend their planet. "We have always been willing to talk," Harris said, "but we will not be threatened." Before Zax Turl could respond, the emergency alarm sounded. A junior Concordat officer rushed in. "High Counselor, unknown ships have appeared at the edge of the system, thousands of them." On the large screens around the hall, a massive fleet of ships appeared. They were like nothing anyone had seen before, dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The Devourers," whispered one of the alien representatives. "They have returned." Fear filled the room. Even Zax Turl looked shaken. The Devourers were not just enemies. They were predators who consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all resources in life. They had not been seen for 1,000 years, and many had hoped they were gone forever. "All Concordat ships, prepare for defense pattern Alpha," Zax Turl ordered into his communicator. Harris watched the screens as the Concordat ships formed rigid, precise formations. It was exactly what they had done in every training exercise. "That won't work," Harris said. "Your defense pattern hasn't changed in 1,000 years. The Devourers will know exactly what to expect." Zax Turl ignored him. The Concordat ships fired their weapons, but the Devourer vessels simply absorbed the energy. Then they began to advance, cutting through the Concordat formations with ease. "We need a new approach," Harris said urgently. "Let our ships help. We can try different tactics." "The Concordat does not need human help," Zax Turl said stiffly, but fear showed in his eyes as more of his ships were destroyed. The Narathi ambassador stepped forward. "Perhaps it is time for a new way. The old patterns have failed." After a moment of hesitation, Zax Turl nodded. Harris quickly gathered leaders from all the species present. Each had different ships, different weapons, different ideas. Instead of forcing them into one pattern, Harris created a flexible plan that used each species' strengths. "Let the Mach ships use their gas-based weapons to create cover," he suggested. "The Tilari can use their speed to distract, while Earth and Concordat ships target their weak points. The Narathi can coordinate it all with their advanced sensors." It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was new. And the Devourers had never faced it before. The battle was fierce, but the combined fleet adapted constantly, changing tactics whenever the Devourers seemed to adjust. Slowly, they pushed the enemy back. When it was over, both sides had suffered losses, but Earth and its allies had won. The Devourers retreated into deep space. In the meeting hall, Zax Turl approached Miller and Harris. "It seems we have much to learn from humans," he said quietly. "Perhaps our ways have become too rigid over time." Miller nodded. "Then let's discuss a new kind of relationship. Not a treaty that places one above another, but an agreement between equals." 1 month later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered again. This time, even the Concordat participated as equals. Together, they created a new document, the Sol Accords, Principles of Sovereign Cooperation. And for the first time since meeting the galaxy, humanity said yes.